my board notes, board agendas, admin meetings, about everything I can. I probably have about 8 or 9 different to-do lists that are running lists that I constantly update daily. So then when it comes time to implement something, I have that list ready. I'm not trying to remember where I wrote that down or what I was thinking or what day that was. Lastly, you've got to have thick skin in this position. I think probably what the biggest eye-opener for me, even though I'd been here 7 years previously, in education, I've always worked for a fellow educator. So I've always worked for someone that was like-minded. And that changes now. And that was probably the most eye-opening experience. Like I said, I knew now I'm going from 1 boss to 7 bosses, but that isn't the difference. The difference is their perspective on everything is different. My superintendent and I saw eye to eye. My former superintendent did. My principal did when I was a teacher. And now this is a little bit different. So you really need to get to know your board members, understand where each of them are coming from, because they all bring with them a different background and a different lens. I will suggest, when times get tough and you're really banging your head against a wall, to go visit a classroom. We're fortunate to have our early learning center, and I tell people all the time, after a late board meeting, a Tuesday morning is a great time to go to the preschool and see all the smiles on the students' faces and the staff and the moms and dads, bringing them in and getting all the little hugs from the kids. And it just reminds you of why you do what you do. This is just my list I'm going through now, things to keep in mind. Another one is using vacation time wisely. Our job's different. We're here 12 months a year, but you still need that vacation time. And I'm not good at using mine. I burn a lot of days every year, but you definitely don't want to use them in crucial times. The first week of school, last week of school, PD days. I like to make sure that when we're having a professional development, if I'm not sitting in one, I'm walking around and being seen in those days. And
hey, Craig?
Yes.
Craig, would you explain what you told me in terms of the when the opening came about and the board was toying with maybe opening it up, and they knew you were here? Tell that story, because I think it'll help some of them that are in a similar situation.
Okay. One policy I have is honesty. My principals know, honesty every time, and I believe you should always speak your mind and be transparent. I had known for years this was going to come, this job position opening up, and I just assumed they would open it up and I would interview, and I was pretty hopeful I would be the best candidate and they'd hire me. As that time ticked closer, I really got to thinking about this, and I went to the board and I told them I didn't know if I could for it if they opened it up. And my reasoning was, at that time I'd worked here 6.5 years, or that time 6 years. And I told the board, you know me. You've seen me on my best days. You've seen me at my worst. You know who I am and you know what I'm about. If you open it up, that tells me you don't have the confidence in me that I want my school board that I work for to have. And a day later, they came back and said, we're going to put it on the agenda. And they voted 7-0 to hire me a year and a half in advance. And so it made me feel very good. And it made the board feel very good to know that they had somebody already locked in. And I just found that very important to speak my mind to them. I could have went in. Somebody else could have come in who maybe was a better car salesman, better spokesman, and told the board what they thought they wanted to hear. And they weren't going to get that from me. They were going to get, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing for these 7 years, and we're going to do it right.
Do you have an open door policy?
I do. It's funny you say that, because I read some different things last night when I was Googling this, open door, closed door policies. I'm available. I make myself available to board members. I do have one board member that's in almost daily. The days he doesn't come in, he might make up for it the next day by coming in twice. Yeah, he's a very intelligent person, and like I said, it helps me to get to know him and him to know me. And it's it's typically always positive with him. It's looking at the future and what we're doing for kids.
Is Jerry still on your board?
Yes, he is.
Is that Jerry?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Dr. Ham is, and he's a great asset. Not only is Dr. Ham a former educator, he was a teacher, assistant principal, assistant superintendent. Our early learning center is named after him. So he has, and his career was spent here in Coffeyville. So it's nice when I have the time to hear the stories about, what went on here in the 60s and 70s and all throughout, to really have that background information.
Have you had to deal with getting the board to stay in their lane as opposed to trying to get into administration?
Yeah, you have that talk about what the board's role is. Usually it's an individual board member that, you call in and you just talk about, you've hired me to make these decisions, and you've got to let me sink or swim and make those decisions, or I'm going to hear from 7 people, daily about what they think the direction of the district is. And again, I go back to the strategic plan. The board's adopted, they helped create it. We've adopted it. Now let me run that plan.
In a nutshell, what is your mission, your district mission?
The success of all students.
Okay.
We are fortunate with the community college. It's almost scary how much my vision aligned with Dr. Watson's vision even before I had heard his vision come out, and just the things that we're able to do now in working with the local college and what we can do for our kids. Dr. Watson's actually from Coffeyville, so that's been nice too to utilize that. And that's key, is utilizing all of your assets. Anybody you've worked with before that you can tap into for assistance is always great.
So who do you call in Topeka when you need help?
I call Randy. Right to the top.
Hotline to the commissioner.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, cool.
And Dale Dennis is always phenomenal. That man's knowledge is just absolutely incredible.
True. Well, class, what questions do you have for Dr. Carell?
Yeah, I've got one, Dr. Burke. So you didn't even interview with the board there in Coffeyville, is that correct?
Yes.
There was not even an interview process.
There was not. We had an executive session where we just talked, but there was no interview.
If they had said, hey, we think you're a really strong candidate, but we're going to open it up, would you withdraw your name, or who knows what would happen then? Or
it's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I think the bigger part of me would probably want to say no, but since I've been here for 7 years, I've now hired, I have 8 building principals. I've hired 7 of them in my tenure. It would have been hard to not put in and leave them. So that would have been a tough decision.
Okay, other questions?
Dr. Carell, how quickly after you took the position did you have that meeting with your board where you did the strategic plan?
We were actually doing it before I even took over. We started it in April.
Okay. And did you do that with KSB, or did you do that on your own?
I did it on my own with the help of 2 consultants that I had a friend that worked for Olathe that they had used.
Okay. Okay.
And so if you ever want their names, shoot me an email and I will get those to you.
Have you ever used the, and now I'm going to use the incorrect term because I was spending some time today looking, but I believe they're called board tools or whatever through KSB that kind of is like a video series where I think you spend 20 minutes of a board meeting, 30 minutes of a board meeting, and it's basically kind of like online board training through KSB. Have you ever used any of that?
I haven't used that, but what I typically do is bring Doug Meckel down from KASB, and we work through the key work of school boards book, which I usually have just sitting around right here. But what I like about that is we tailor it to something specific going on here in Coffeyville. So they're not just getting this PD in isolation. We're actually applying it to something happening here in town.
Other questions for Dr. Carell?
I was going to tell you, I like the color of your office. I think it's the same color.
It looks like the exact same color. I noticed that right away.
It's like you're in the same office almost.
I know, and this was Dr. Morton's color. He already had it, and I knew when I moved in I was going to paint over it. I just knew that. And I came in and I thought, it really isn't so bad. And then my degrees are from Pitt State and KU. Each of the degrees has a red border in it, and I thought, what, it matches, so we're just going to go with it.
Okay, now, Dr. Carell and I were both in Boston for the National School Board Convention this past weekend. Craig, did you happen to go to the behind the curtain presentation?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, you've touched on a lot of the things the guy talked about, and he'd been a music director, and he'd been an assistant superintendent and a superintendent, and he'd just gotten, one of those cushy college jobs where you get to be the assistant dean or something, and he was talking, and, keep in mind, this is the National School Board Convention, so, there's probably 200 people in the room, and all but 5 of them are board members, and just 5 superintendents there. This guy's talking about what's important to board members, and you guys have noticed the theme, and I've noticed that reading your discussion forum posts. Over communicate, and that's what they said was the most important thing, over and over and over again. And they kept saying, we'd rather know than not know. We don't want anything sugar coated. Just tell it like it is. Don't keep things from us. That's the worst thing you can possibly do. Make sure all of us know the same thing at the same time if possible. If that's not possible, then make sure at least the board president knows first, and then everybody.
Yes.
But keep communication going with your board. And one of the things I use with my back to school presentation with my cabinet is the number one thing to me is communication. And I tell them, I want you to let me know what's going on. If you think it's ever going to land on my desk in any way.
Right.
And if you think you might have told me, but you're not sure, tell me twice. I'd rather know twice than have you forget and have me not ask. You may want to send me an email. You may want to make it a call. You may want to stop in. A lot of different ways to communicate. If you really want to make sure the message gets there, communicate it 2 different ways.
Right.
But you all wanting to be superintendents, don't forget that you can't possibly now. We're in our 4th class, and we've talked about communication and collaboration almost every week. But when in doubt, build a relationship, and it's always in doubt. And when in doubt, over-communicate. And if you do those 2 things, you'll be in great shape.
You will. And I tell my principals, if they call my office and don't reach me, if it's important, call my cell phone, and I will always answer. And if you call my cell phone, I don't answer right away. It's because I'm stepping out.
Okay. Any more questions for Dr. Carell? All right. Craig, thank you so much. As I mentioned, I owe you lunch.
No, you don't. I enjoyed it.
We'll catch up sometime. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
See
y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will get directly to the project. Let's do some good things first. We've got a couple of people who passed the praxis. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yay.
That is so cool. And as we were starting class and I was trying to get a hold of Dr. Carell and not doing that very well, we had kind of an impromptu coaching seminar from the 2 people who have taken it and passed it. I appreciate the insight that you gave. And in the 7th class, we will go into some depth on multiple choice questions and on constructed response questions. So as we get closer, although it'll be a little redundant for our 2 people who have taken it and passed it, they'll be able to chime in with their own thoughts, having taken it most recently. So, other good things besides passing the praxis?
Well, Dr. Burke, my daughter was born last week, so I have a new addition to my family, and
All right.
everybody's doing well.
Congratulations.
All right.
Yep.
That's excellent news.
On a personal level there.
Yeah, what's her name?
Her name is Anne Caroline.
My oldest daughter's name is Anne as well. It's a great name.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yep.
All right. Let me ask you this about the project. How many of you have gotten way into it and are just you're loving it?
Well, I don't know about loving it, but I haven't. I have a problem.
Okay. Here's what I want to do. I want to change this project up a little bit, especially the first part, if you all don't mind. But listen to what I have to say, and then you can let me know if you mind. The critical thing about Standard 1 is you having an excellent understanding of how to develop a mission, vision, and strategic plan. Now, the rubric isn't really written that way, but I think we can adjust that. And what I'm going to suggest is that you do some research on 3 different school districts and look at their process of what they went through to come up with mission, vision, and strategic plan. So process is one thing, and then list what their mission, vision, and strategic plan is. And I think if you look at 3 different ways of doing that, or 3 different entities, even if they use the same method, that'll give you a good solid background in how to go about this. I'll give you a couple of examples. I was when I was in Neodesha, like the king of Southeast Kansas was a guy named Dan Noonswander. He was the superintendent in Pittsburgh, and he'd been superintendent in Lawrence. And he was just thought of as the dean of all superintendents. Although he did get kind of asked to leave Lawrence because he got into a fight, fist fight. He got in an argument with the editor of the newspaper over a football situation. And he ended up realizing he couldn't argue with people who bought ink by the barrel, and ended up leaving Lawrence to go to Pittsburgh. And I think I mentioned earlier to you that that's one place where the board president and vice president come in and tell you what's going to be on the agenda when they meet. So it's an odd kind of place. So knowing that, I was talking to Dan about, used to be a guy, I don't know if he still does this, a guy named Bill Cook. And Bill Cook did strategic planning throughout the nation. And he had a really complicated method on how to do it. And he sold his premise at 5-day-long seminars that you had to pay over $2,000 for the week plus expenses to go to. And so I came back and I was thinking, golly, I don't know if my board's ready for this. And he said, I've been through that training and I've got some ideas on how we might be able to shorten it and make it more practical. And I said, well, gosh, if you'd be willing to help us, that'd be great. What would you charge? And he said, I just want mileage. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I mean, almost any outside facilitator you're going to talk to is going to want a couple of $1,000s at a minimum. So he did 2 different strategic plans for me, working with our community and our board in Neodesha. And when I came here, I talked to the board right away. We need a strategic plan. And I've got a guy I think can help us and make it very practical and very simple. And they said, well, then call him. And so the first 2 strategic plans we put together here, he facilitated for us. So our mission, as simple as it gets, and most people would call this a slogan more than a mission, except, people have a long mission statement that no one remembers. That's not any good. Ours is the relentless pursuit of excellence. That's our mission. Everybody remembers it. I tell them at least twice a year. So what would you think about doing research on 3 different strategic planning processes that would include coming up with mission, vision, and the actual plan?
I'm in if nobody else is. That's right what I'm working on right now.
Hey, I'm good.
Well, and unfortunately, I've already spent numerous hours on mine and have my paper almost finished. So do I have to switch gears now, or?
Oh, of course not.
Yes.
No. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll do it.
Yeah,
Mine is about the vision, but it's all bond and kindergarten, all day K. So
No. You can. You're so far into it. You just do the real project. That first part of it.
Okay.
Now the second half shouldn't be very complicated at all. You know, it's really compiling different ways of communicating from your school board through your community to the legislature and even to national governmental officials. And so what would be kind of cool to put in that part would be, you know, how you decided who to contact, what you wrote to them, or how you talked to them or contacted them, and what the results were.
And because it was the bond and local, it was more community-based and parent-based, you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't at the legislative level.
Yeah, and you know, the first part of the project is the strategic plan. The second part has almost all to do with just communication techniques. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I had put in how we had communicated to get the word out about all-day kindergarten.
Oh, yeah, that would work.
How we were able to get the bond passed. You know, it was a mail-in ballot, and we did it through flyers and social media and Skyward and newspapers, and I included that. My biggest concern was I didn't videotape myself when I did my presentation last week, and I was worried about that, so that was my question.
Oh. Well, we're gonna do in the last class period. We're gonna do each of you will do a 10-minute presentation on on the project that you did.
Okay, so I don't need a videotape from my digital media folder or whatever it is. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so looking at the rubric here, can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so board communications, local communications, state communications, national communications, and then if you can attend a local political event, we've got one here in Wichita coming up on Saturday from 10 o'clock to 11:30 with the South Central Kansas legislative people. I plan on asking a question, something along the lines of, in order to get reelected, what are you willing to do to distance yourself from Governor Brownback's failed economic policies?
It's a good one.
Yeah, squirm. I mean, the Republicans are going to squirm. The Democrats are going to go, I'm going to have a field day.
They're going to throw you out.
Well, and you know, I mentioned I was just in Boston, and we were in one of the historical sites, and my T-shirt that I got, I could have gotten Harvard or whatever. My T-shirt is, "Keep calm and start the revolution." I'm going to wear that T-shirt on Saturday.
Oh, Lord.
I'm kind of a troublemaker. We need more of this.
So where is the event on Saturday?
It's at the Wichita State Metroplex, which is around 29th and Oliver, I think.
Okay.
Now, if you want to, if you don't have anything locally you can go to, if you can get when they go back to Topeka, if you can get away for a day and go up. How many of you have actually been to Topeka when the legislature is in session?
Yes.
How many of you have not?
I haven't.
Okay, well, it's pretty cool, and you can find out, you know, where your representative or your senator will have their office, and you can make an appointment to talk to them, or you can just be in the gallery and watch as they conduct their business. That's another way of attending a political event. Doesn't have to be one where it's an eggs and issues thing. But the reason for doing this is to get you familiar with contacting those folks and not holding them in any kind of awe. I mean, they're public servants. And, you know, when I took this job, one of my predecessors had overspent his credit card on personal things and buying board members gifts and all kinds of things, and he got fired for it. And so at the first eggs and issues thing I went to, there were 2 representatives and a senator from Hayesville, and they all made fun of Hayesville. and quite frankly, it just pissed me off.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I can publicly embarrass them if I want, because it was an open mic situation where you just got in line and asked questions. But I thought, I don't know these people very well yet. I'm going to quietly go up to them at the end, introduce myself as the new superintendent in Hayesville, and tell them how much I don't appreciate this. And that's what I did. And it was kind of fun to watch them trip all over their tongue as they backed up. And said, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Although the senator said, I didn't say that. I didn't say anything bad. So I wrote it down. Yes, you did. Like, if you just denying it doesn't make it go away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's standard 6, and then standard 1 has to do with, of course, strategic planning, vision, and mission. All right. So is that pretty clear as far as all that? The project?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
Hey, so Dr. Burke, just to circle back, so we're going to research 3 school districts on their process of how they created their mission, vision, and strategic plan.
That's correct.
Okay.
And one of those could and should be your own. Make it simple.
Okay.
All right. Let me show you what we're supposed to work on tonight. Oh, we've got some fun. All right. I want to share something with you that's personal. And I'm going to have you kind of go through it with me, okay? All right. Let me get rid of this one. All right. So I mentioned to you that at a board meeting 2 months ago, you guys are familiar with the Great Bend fiasco?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know, Richard, has this reached?
No, I have not heard about it.
Oh, well, you're in luck. Well, here's the deal. In a nutshell, we'll call it. There was a swimming event, and on the way back on the bus, it's alleged that one of the boys sodomized another boy. And so there's been a lot of television news people showing up there, wanting to talk to the superintendent. He hasn't really said the word no comment yet, but he hasn't looked really good on TV yet either. And so, did this reach Southeast Kansas? Did you guys hear anything about it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You know, I have, now that you've said that, yes, I remember seeing that on the news.
All right. So, one of my newest board members says, so do we have a way of handling a situation like that? Do we need to talk about this? And I said, no, I don't think so, but let me do some research. I'll get back to you. So what I have posted here for you is something I sent to all the board members right before the March board meeting. So at our last meeting, we briefly discussed activity bus supervision. I was asked to get more information on how we handle this. I checked with District Athletic Director Richard Elliott, and he told me he holds a meeting every year at the start of school year to review expectations of coaches on a variety of topics. He instructs all the coaches on expectations regarding bus supervision at that time. At the start of each sports season, he meets again with the coaches and discusses many issues, including bus supervision. This includes making sure that our student athletes are always supervised when on the bus. Is this vague to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't meant to be. It was meant to say, these are our procedures. You have nothing to worry about. We cover this with our coaches at least twice every year.
Mm-hmm.
And those who coach 3 seasons get to hear it 4 times. And because we're fairly shrewd individuals, if we have boys and girls riding on the same bus, we actually separate them. Now, our students in Great Bend are pretty wily. It doesn't seem to matter if you have boys and girls on the bus. They may come up with their own sexual activity. All right, so at the meeting, I say, well, I thought we handled this. And the board member says, well, I didn't read my email, so I don't know. And I say, okay, that's fine. I understand you're busy. Read it, and then let me know what you think. And if it's not enough, we can talk. So I'm in Boston, and this is what I get. Great. This tells me there is a policy, but does not say what the policy is. Not the answer I was looking to see. This is an answer I would expect to hear from someone running for office. Smoke and mirrors is not the correct answer.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about energy leadership. Did we talk about that?
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Remember those bottom two catabolic areas? One where you kind of go into a little bit of a poor me kind of place. And that's level 1. Level 2 is more aggressive. I win, you lose. I went to level 2.
Strive for 5, right?
Yes, strive for 5. But I went to level 2 for a moment as I envisioned myself strangling this board member. Then I thought, well, you know what? I could fire off a snarky email in response. That would just start an email war,
Right.
which he may be trying to get me to do anyway, but I'm not going to fall for that. So I showed it to my board president because we were in Boston together, and she says, you know, he's just not ever going to fit in. And I said, well, it's just kind of the way he is. And so he sits next to, at board meetings, he sits next to my assistant superintendent for learning services. And she says, he says stuff like this all the time. I mean, he just thinks he's funny. And he says these little smart alecky things under his breath throughout the whole meeting. And she thinks it's pretty funny. And I think, well, okay, if I were over there, not sitting in the big chair, sitting in your chair, I'd probably think it was funny too. So I get back on Tuesday morning, and I'm thinking, okay, apparently I didn't understand what he wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to board policy, and I'm going to do a search for student behavior, student conduct. And based upon what I find, I may do some more research in terms of sexual things and maybe transportation supervision. And then I'm going to go and get into the high school student handbook. And I'm going to see what they have to say about a variety of topics that would be an umbrella over this whole situation. And remember, when your board approves your handbooks, it has the full force of board policy. So if he actually just wanted to know, do we have a policy on this? And the simple answer is yes, then we just didn't communicate. So this is the student conduct policy up here at the top. And then we have a student conduct rule. And then we've got a sexual harassment policy.
Dr. Burke, in your district or the other districts, don't all employees sign off that they have reviewed the sexual harassment? And,
Yes.
Okay, so would that have been something that you could have gone back on as a policy that every employee has signed and understands that?
Yeah, that would be part of it. And yet, then when you get into the handbook's like, 42 pages long, although board policy is almost 500 pages long.
So is there a difference between a guideline and then a policy? Because a handbook's like a guidelines, and
Yeah.
the board docs are the policy.
Yeah, the board policy they're the broad rules, And then what you have in the handbooks are more guidelines and procedures that are more specific. So in order to be helpful, I went ahead and highlighted some of the things that were important. You know, there's activity trip policy, there's the bullying policy, there's the child abuse policy, there's the discrimination policy, there's the conduct code, the respect code, the student discipline policies. We have a point system in our high school. If you get 45 points, it generates an expulsion hearing. One event can be an expulsion, a 45-minute event, a 45-point event. So you can do one thing and get an expulsion hearing. Or, you know, you could be tardy 9 times and get one too. That doesn't really happen. But you get 45 points that way. So then we have a description of all the different categories of violations. And in that, in Class A, is rape or attempted rape, and what that is defined as. And then there's bullying, harassment and bullying, and then there's the sexual area, and first offenses, second offenses, third offenses, and fourth offenses, sexual activity, intimate contact with self or others, including, it looks like, de-pantsing people. Okay, so this was a total of 7 pages of policies. If we still have to talk about this at the board meeting, I don't expect to have to say anything. I think the rest of the board, well, let me back up. So in response to the email from that board member, I sent an email to him and I blind carbon copied the board president, and I said, I'm sorry that what I sent to you the first time apparently wasn't what you wanted. I've done some research, and based upon what the experts tell me from the Kansas Association of School Boards, if I'm going to send something to one board member, I need to send it to all board members. So in just a few minutes, I'll be sending you and the rest of the board attachments that will include all this information. So, ended up having to be 2 different attachments because I couldn't make the table that had all the different offenses and all the different points line up. So I had to make it a PDF. So 2 different things come. And then I turned around and sent the email that had the 2 attachments to all the board members, and I blind carbon copied the athletic director and the high school principal, so they would know what I had done. So, this should be sufficient. If you wanted to know what our policies were, this includes all of our policies that pertain to this kind of thing. If he wants us to have an anti-sodomy policy, I don't think we're going to do that. Because there's no end to it. You can't make a separate policy for every single thing that kids might think of doing at some point.
It was interesting, Dr. Burke, because we had a board member bring this up, and we had a discussion at our last board meeting. And what he wanted to know was exactly where on the bus the sponsors are supposed to sit.
Well, and we don't want to get into that. We talked about it. And part of the problem with that is, now remember, when you get sued, when your district gets sued, the attorney who is prosecuting is going to ask for all of your board policies that relate to that incident. And if you have specific board policies that say, or parts of your handbook that say that the sponsors must sit in seat number 1, seat number 15, and seat number 30, and you fail to do that, and you may have a good reason for not doing it. It could be that one of the sponsors' wife was going to have a baby, and he drove himself, and then you only have 2 sponsors, and you can't cover 3 different places with 2 sponsors. Now you could walk up and down the aisles. I mean, there's something you could do about that. But anything you say that you're going to do that you don't do makes you look worse in the eyes of the jury.
Right.
So you need to be careful, and that's why we make policies pretty general.
And we weren't going to do that, but it was interesting. That's what our board member was after. You know what I'm saying? Wanted something That's exact, and my superintendent now did a very good job of kind of diffusing that and explaining, kind of what you did right there. But it was really interesting that they wanted to micromanage to the point that they wanted to say how many sponsors were going to be on the bus and where they were going to sit on the bus. And I found that very interesting.
Well, I've had a feeling that that's where we might have been headed. And when I talked to the athletic director, and I talked to the middle school ones too, because they're dealing with students that might be sexual as well.
Right.
Nobody wanted to be very precise about where they wanted every sponsor to sit. But I'm open to other interpretations. So what do y'all think?
Depends on the situation.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, where you put your sponsors, how many sponsors you have, depends on the situation, the type of trip, the makeup of the people, length of time, distance, things like that would depend how you would assign sponsors, and where they would sit would be depending on the students that are there. So I would just, it'd be just, we're going to supervise the bus.
Yeah. Well, I think keeping it general like that's probably a pretty good idea.
So.
All right. Well, anything else on this? My advice is don't strangle your board members. Although I will tell you, there was somebody in Southeast Kansas who actually did come across a table in a board meeting and put his hands around the neck of a board member.
Oh, wow.
And not only did he keep his job, the other board members said, you know what? He had it coming.
Wow.
Did this explanation appease your board member then? I mean, did that fix it, or?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I just wondered if the response you got from your board member after you gave him this,
I don't have one yet, and so I'm thinking, well, maybe he'll move on, or I'm thinking he'll make another big deal about it, and I'll be prepared either way.
Yeah.
Now, using a system of no surprises, he would at least call me before the board meeting and say, you know what, that wasn't sufficient. I'm going to bring it up again.
Right.
Now, he's still in his first year being a board member, so he may not do that. But then I'll have the board president talk to him about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not my job to discipline board members, it's hers.
Okay.
All right, let me get rid of this one. All right, so what did you think of the guest speaker and what the guest speaker had to say?
I think he was great.
Yeah, I did too.
The relationships and the communication is once again a theme that we've heard over and over and over again, and I think it just continues to make us aware of the fact that that's going to be critical to our success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was really good. I worried about his workload because all of the things he was doing, I was sitting here thinking he's going to burn out quickly. So I think getting invited to all those things that your building principals do is great. But I don't know. I think sometimes maybe he's doing more than he should. I was wondering if his family might miss him.
Or maybe they're happy. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, that's a good point. Although if he does this to start, he might be able to back off a little bit, and the recollection will be, boy, he's everywhere.
Right.
And so it might be, he'll pace himself later. I think that's probably something he'll do. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, have you ever experienced, we talk about chain of command and parents talking to teachers, and if that doesn't work, then inviting your assistant principal or the principal to have that superintendent present in that student improvement team meeting. I wonder if, have you ever been in a situation similar? Or to me, I think it would be very easy for a parent to just bypass the principal and go straight to the soup because he's sitting there.
Yes, I have. And it's hard to remember because, we like to be helpful and we also like to seem smart. And if we know the answer, You have to be able to just blurt that out. And yet, when you're in a situation where it's somebody else's tent, it's important to remember to say, well, let's find out what the principal thinks.
Mhm.
And that usually takes care of it. If they come up with an answer that's pretty bizarre, you can talk to them about it later.
Mhm.
But usually, as he mentioned, people are pretty much on the same page.
Thank you.
Okay. So tonight we're going to do some, we'll discuss the case studies. We'll discuss the video. And then I've got, have we talked about last yet?
No.
No.
Have we talked about the 4 agreements yet? Okay. Have we talked about the rules of the school game? All right. Have we talked about what to do if you're sued?
Call a lawyer.
Well, that's part of it. Have we talked about indemnification?
No.
Okay, well, let's work our way through these. All right, when I got here, we had the worst customer service you could even imagine. We would purposely make parents angry. In fact, the buildings would make them angry. It's like they poured gasoline on them, set them on fire, and said, "Go see the superintendent." Honestly, it was crazy. We were a lot like what I would say the Balkans are, in Eastern Europe, genetically identical but hate each other. So principals would actually trick each other, prank each other, bad stuff. I mean, when I'm saying tricking and pranking, I'm not saying it's fun. They would purposely try to make each other look bad. We were not a unified school district, in my view. And we didn't really care what parents thought. Our rules were more important than what parents thought. So we worked really hard on customer service. And one of the things that helped us was the LAST technique. So the L stands for listen. So when people come to talk to you, one of the most important things you can do is just listen to them. And when I say that, take notes, ask them for more information. I just had an hour and 15-minute meeting with an angry, upset grandmother. And gosh, the situation, you guys go through this all the time. The situation was so sad. They've had to adopt these 3 kids because the father's in prison. The mother's on her 22nd boyfriend in the last 2 years. And so they ended up adopting the kids because she's not a fit mother. So really a lot of poverty. The grandma's husband didn't go to the doctor in a timely way, and he's going to die soon of lung cancer. And so to compound this, one of our teachers called one of the oldest granddaughter a bully in front of the class. And it wasn't even a bullying thing. I mean, you guys know everything's bullying to some people, and no one understands what the real definition is. But so she calls this girl a bully in front of the rest of the class, and then the rest of the class starts calling the girl a bully. And so this mother has got way too much stuff on, her grandma has way too much stuff on her plate. She's barely keeping her head above water. And I listened to her for an hour and 15 minutes, and she told me the same story 3 times. But I just kept listening to her, and people just want to be heard. So listen, take notes, look them in the eye, don't check your cell phone. Listen. The A stands for apologize. Now, apologize is not the same as taking the blame for. Apologize means, gosh, I'm sorry you're going through this. Oh, and by the way, let me back up one step. The teacher who called the kid a bully, her husband used to be an assistant principal for us. He's got Lyme disease. He's almost died 3 times. He's on full-time disability. She's got her own issues. But I can't tell that to the grandma. So, I mean, it's a lot of pain. So apologize. I'm sorry you're going through this. S stands for solve. Help them solve the problem. Doesn't mean you cave in to whatever they want. It means you come up with a workable solution with them to help them solve their problem. And then finally, to thank them for coming to you and bringing it to your attention. Now, most of my principals have this right by their phone in their office, so that when they get that phone call, they can look at LAST and they can go through the steps. My personnel director has it on the back of his door. So when he's having a confidential conversation with somebody who's an unhappy employee, he can look up and see LAST. So I'm going to bounce down to the rules to the school game, because this is what happened. Help this mother with her daughter. Her daughter's missed 45 days of school. I said, usually when you miss this much school, the DCF is alerted. And she said, I wondered why they were coming around. Well, okay. Here are the rules to the school game. And when my son, who's going to be a senior at Friends, was a sixth grader, he and his buddy across the street would spend the night with each other. They'd play video games all night long, all weekend long, and by Monday he was sick. So he'd miss a day of school. So I picked him up. I looked at his grades, and his grades were pretty bad, and he was about the biggest kid in the whole sixth grade. I said to him, are you the biggest kid in the whole sixth grade? He said, yeah, pretty much. And I said, how would you like to be in the sixth grade again next year? Because I can arrange for that. And he kind of teared up. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, oh, I've seen your grades. You're going to have to do better. And I said, well, by the way, do you know the rules to the school game? And he said, no. I said, oh, that explains everything. Rule number 1, you have to go to school every day. Important things happen. If you're not there, you miss it. So rule number 1, you have to go to school every day, unless you're really, really, really sick. If you have the sniffles, you go to school. Rule number 2, pay attention to the teacher. They're there to tell you important things. If you can, sit in the front row. Lean forward. Pay attention to the teachers, rule number 2. Rule number 3, do the work. Rule number 4, often forgotten, turn the work in. And rule number 5, and if you do rule number 5 and you're between an A and a B, you're probably getting the A. Act like you like your teacher. By the way, it works in graduate school too. All right, so those are the 5 rules to the school game. And the mother was so impressed, she said, would you write those down for me? I want to put those on the refrigerator and make a copy and put them on her door. I said, well, I'd be happy to. So helping her solve the problem was giving her the rules to the school game. At 8th grade promotion in both middle schools, and actually one year I had the board members bring props. I teach the parents and the kids the 5 rules to the school game, and I have one big sign that's got a 60 on it, and another big sign that's got a 0 on it. And so I have a board member holding the 0, and I say, let's say you do a really good job on your homework, but you don't turn it in. What score do you get? I have the board member holding the 0 sign, hold up the 0. Okay, let's say you do a really bad job on your homework, but you turn it in. What grade do you get? I have the board member holding the 60 sign, hold the 60 up. And then I say, okay, class, I want to see you in 4 years. If you can figure out the difference between 60 and 0, of which one's bigger, you're probably going to graduate. So class, which is bigger, 60 or 0? Now, they're just excited to go out to eat after the promotion. But the parents can remember this. So it's not an inoculation. Like most learning, it's not an inoculation. You have to hear it more than once. But that's the rules to the school game. All right, the 4 agreements. There's actually a book called The 4 Agreements. The first agreement, be impeccable with your word. Tell the truth. Do what you say you're going to do. Rule number 2, don't take things personally. Most times when somebody says something, you take it personally, it wasn't meant that way. Sometimes it is, but most times it's not. Rule number 3, or agreement number 3, don't make assumptions. You guys remember the chalkboard example of assume from Bad News Bears?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Don't make assumptions. Agreement number 4, do your personal best. And why would you ever do anything less than your personal best? So, in my back to school presentation, people get to hear this stuff every single year. Not because I want to do it, it's because they keep asking for it. Hey, you've got to tell us again. Make sure that's in your presentation every single year. All right, so in the event your district is sued, you're going to want to call the attorney at the School Board Association. They're not litigators, but they'll give you some feedback. You can fax them the documents. The next step is you, or depending on how big a central office you have, somebody's got to call the liability insurance carrier. The liability insurance carrier will tell you who your attorney is going to be, because they're going to pay for it. They'll contact the attorney will contact you. And then we hope that's all the further it goes. We had a situation, I hope none of you remember this, probably 5 or 6 years ago. We had a kid who was a 9th grader and having 9th grade football practice. And the coach is trying to buck people up about, we got a game coming up. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to win. And this kid says, my dad tells us we don't have a chance to win a game. We'll never win a game because our high school stinks at football. Well, that didn't go over real well with the rest of the students. So they get in the locker room, and the belts that they have for football pants?
Yep.
They have a little D ring on them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the freshman went to the locker room. The coach was attending to something else still on the field. There was nobody in the locker room. And some of the players took exception to what this kid said, took off their little pathetic belts and started hitting him with the belts. Now the news anchor named Susan Peters referred to this on the news as a belt rape. Nothing was inserted. I mean, this kid was still wearing his uniform. I doubt he was even feeling anything. But the mother had contacted Cake News, and this is what we got. Along with, the next day, a letter from her attorney that they were going to sue us. So we call the insurance company calls the attorney comes to see me, and we get ready. We waited 4 years for this kid to turn 19, because at that point it no longer was relevant legally. They never did a thing with it. We had to get ready for it, but more importantly, we took the PR hit, because that's not reporting the news, that's an editorial calling what happened a belt rape. So, when you get sued, and you probably will, your attorney will work with you on the processes you'll go through in terms of giving depositions, what might happen in court. But also keep in mind, only about less than 5% of the lawsuits that are filed ever get to court. 95% or more of everything else is settled. So you have to prepare like you're going to actually get there. And I don't know, in your previous school law course, as you're going through a situation where you think you could end up in court, it's really important that you have contemporaneous notes. And I learned this one the hard way too. When I was a principal, there was a sexual abuse case, and we didn't get to court for a year and a half. And I'm being cross-examined or examined by the county attorney, and then there was an attorney for mother, attorney for father, and an attorney for the kid. And so they're all asking me questions. I'm doing my best to remember a year and a half ago. The SRS gal gets up there. They ask her questions. She's got notes. She gets to use her notes. You don't always get to use the notes, but if you have them, you can if the judge says it's okay. If you don't have them, you don't have them. So documenting is absolutely critical. All right, the term indemnification. It's a law in Kansas that if you're sued personally, meaning not only is the district being sued, but you're being sued personally, they're coming after your stuff, your house, your car, your bank accounts. If you ask the board to indemnify you within 15 days of your notification, they must indemnify you. And that means that the board's insurance company will pay for your defense, and they'll pay for any damages awarded.
Can they say no?
No, they have to say yes.
And it's within 15 days of you receiving paperwork?
Yes. Now, it's not on the praxis test that I remember, but there's more to this job than just the praxis test.
Amen.
So anyway,
That's important.
yeah, it's really, really important. I mean, you hope you're not sued personally ever. We tell people there's not a question about, well, you guys already know from being principals. I'm not worried about being sued. I'm worried about being successfully sued.
So if this would happen, I mean, walk us through that then. Are you talking to us as a superintendent or as a principal, or, you know, I mean, what would you do? Would you wait for the board meeting? Would you?
I would call, all right, here's the deal on special meetings. The board president can call a special meeting anytime they want.
Okay.
Or 3 board members can call for a special meeting. But in this particular case, you would talk to the board president and have a special meeting scheduled as soon as possible. Don't wait till the 14th day.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. Okay.
Yeah. And I talked to a county attorney who was a county attorney in Riley County for 28 years. And he said, gosh, it seemed like I was always going and talking to the city council about, you know, I need to be indemnified again, because they were not only suing the county or the city, they were also suing him personally. It's rare. And when it happened to me, it was over a copy machine lease. Did I tell you about the copy machine fiasco?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. I've made all the mistakes for you. As superintendent in Valley Falls, there was a guy operating in Northeast Kansas, and he had all kinds of copy machines, and you would lease copy machines from him. Now, they were not new copy machines. They were, you know, reconditioned. And so, and they weren't really copiers, they were jammers. So it's just infuriating to use them, but you know, working with teachers, if you don't have a functional copy machine, you've got unhappy people.
Amen.
So I'd call the guy and say, okay, your copy machines are crap. I need new copy machines. And he'd say, okay, I'll have them right there. Now, new copy machines to him meant ones I'd never seen before. And so he was just shifting them around. So, in fact, a repairman came one day and I said to him, if I put a 45 caliber weapon on top of this copy machine, would you do the right thing? And he said, you mean shoot it or shoot me? And I said, well, your choice. But, I mean, fixing these things was crazy. All right, so this guy actually, it was kind of a pyramid scheme, and he got in trouble because one of the superintendents in the county decided to hold off on signing the lease. And so he forged that superintendent's signature. And that became the part that kind of unraveled his little situation. Here's what we learned. You don't have the authority as superintendent to enter into an agreement over $20,000 without board approval. So they came after the school districts, and we had 4 different leases that we were on the hook for. And when we talked to the attorneys, they said, well, you know, these lease agreements were technically approved when the board paid the bills. So they were approved by ratification of the bill. And that counts. That's what we were hanging our hat on. We ended up having to settle all of these lease agreement things. Sometimes it was 10 cents on the dollar. Sometimes the highest one was 25 cents on the dollar. And, you know, it's like GE Capital out of Cleveland had one. I mean, they're all over the place. Now, this guy was just a wheeler dealer. And he said, you know, to make it up to you, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 4 tickets to a Royals baseball game. And so I'm thinking, yeah, right. Like you've actually got those. And if you do, I'll get a nosebleed because it'll be so high in the stadium. And so he delivered. We went to the game. His Royals tickets were right behind home plate, 4 rows. I mean, they were amazing seats. And then his next seat was in Leavenworth Penitentiary. So we never had to go to court. We ended up settling. The closest we came to going to court was I had to give a deposition, which is still a situation where, remember, the attorneys are operating in their ballpark, not in, you know, we're used to talking as school administrators, but we're not attorneys. So they ask questions that are infuriating. You know, the ones that are kind of like, are you still beating your wife? So in a different case, I had an attorney ask me in a deposition, is it ever acceptable for a teacher to give a student a ride to school? I said, it depends. He said, what could it possibly depend on? I said, okay, let's say the wind chill is 50 degrees below zero. And you see a student walking to school with no coat, and you know they're 1.5 miles from school, and that's potentially deadly. You know the student, you're not going to do this on a regular basis, but to save their life, you pull over, roll down your window and say, hop in, I'm going to give you a ride to school. Is it ever acceptable for a teacher to give a student a ride to school? Well, it can be. Context matters. So they keep asking questions like that, and it's infuriating for the attorney and for me. And he said, you know, why are you making this so difficult? I said, why don't you ask better questions? They don't like that much, but, you know, they're trying to paint you into a corner with every question they ask. You know, why didn't you get board approval for these leases? Our board meets once a month. The copy machines that I had didn't work. I didn't want to call a special board meeting just to approve a copy machine lease. I thought I could wait till the next board meeting. Makes sense to me. He saw it as a violation of the law. So, in any case, that kind of gives you a feel for, well, you guys have heard from enough parents who threaten lawsuits anyway, I would imagine. Yeah, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to call my attorney. Has anybody ever said, I'm going to call my attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you wish you had a nickel for every time that happened?
Yeah.
And most of them don't even know an attorney. I mean, that's just something they say to try to bully you. So, you know, I've had people get into discussions with them and say, oh, we've got attorneys too. In fact, our attorney is Folston Seifton, the largest law firm in the state. I don't know who yours is. Probably somebody who graduated in the bottom half of the class. No, we don't say that. We think it. That's an inside thought. All right. Let's take a 7-minute break.
Okay.
Coach Kramer, I can hardly see you on that camera. All I see is the top of your head. What's up?
Well, I've never been one for the camera.
You look like Kramer off the show over the fence. All you ever see the top of his head.
How's this?
There you are. I tell you what, you'll look a day over 40.
I'm just not one to be on the camera.
You're just missing the mustache. That's how I remember you right there.
haven't had that for a while.
I have to hide all my chins with mine.
Oh, no. I'm always here. I'm just not one to be in the camera.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I couldn't see you.
No problem.
That's funny. He told us why his camera's up. He doesn't like to be on camera.
Well, he needs to fence up.
That's what I told him. Like, what show was that? I can't remember the show.
Tool time.
Tool time.
Tool time.
Yeah, tool time. I need a drink, dude. You just go get soda?
Wilson from Tool Time.
Got water all over there?
I got too much forehead. I can't do it that way.
Looking good, Rush. Looking good, man.
Hey, you need to get that chair fixed. Every time you move it, the camera zooms in on you.
What? You don't like my squeak?
Now, I told Mr. Howard last week that I would donate the first $20 for your chair.
All right, point taken. I'll take care of it.
Oh, no, it's not your fault. It's that other guy over there that won't get you a new chair.
Yeah, I know it. It's
Budget cuts.
It squeaks and it sinks. It doesn't hold its piston there. I always down low.
There goes that chair again. I'm going to go find something to drink. Let's go find something to drink down here. How the hell number that? Joan got what? Yeah, I hear you. Oh my. All right.
Joan, did you have board meeting Monday night?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you, I know you're a lady on the go. Did your board president share with the board some of the remarks that he heard at the track meet? I wonder if he would follow through.
Actually, he did, Randy, and I appreciate you saying that. He said, oh, by the way, met this fellow over at the pre-pray track meet. So, yeah. He said he was afraid to talk to you at first because you asked if he was the board president.
Oh. I should have, prefaced that a little better.
Made me laugh. He said, I wasn't sure to tell him yes or if I should hide.
Well, good. I'm glad he remembered and shared.
He did. I appreciate those kind words. That's pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, he's a large fella. He's hard to miss.
Yeah, he's a big guy. He's a big guy. And his son is a sixth grader. And he's growing pretty quickly, but his poor coordination can't quite stay up with his size at this point. So he's definitely a bull in a china closet. It's kind of fun.
Now, is this the family that opened the restaurant in town?
It is. They also own Stinger, which is that hay company, that makes hay monster kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, his wife and several other gals, 2 or 3 years ago, came to my house to look at my old barn, and they wanted to tear down the barn and use it as decorations in this new restaurant.
Oh, cool.
And I told them, I said, well, it's yours. Just tear it down. Then they figured out that maybe there was just a little bit too much work for the benefit of the wood you got, so they didn't do it. But yeah.
Have you been to the restaurant yet?
No, ma'am, I haven't, but I will next time.
Yeah, once Highway 50 is done, we're going to become a destination because it's really kind of a fun place. They did a really nice job. The inside's pretty cool, and some of the best homemade food and desserts you'll have in the area. So it's kind of fun.
Well, that sounds like an excuse for me and Nicole to leave those 4 girls at home and go eat.
There you go.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, I want to get over and see that.
Okay, is it time? Right. So the first case study. John and Randy, let me ask you this. If you're given data for one of your constructed responses, will it be this much data?
I hope not.
No.
No.
Holy smokes.
It's a lot of data.
Yeah, only what they ask for, and yes, that would be overwhelming.
Yeah, you need a couple of days probably to look at all this data. All right, so it doesn't go without saying, but it should. Not a good idea to do anything unethical when it comes to testing.
I'm gonna write that down.
Okay, good.
First time you've heard that one, right?
Good to remember. All right, any of you read any of the Freakonomics books?
No.
All right, well, there's one part, they're written by economists. And economists think that the entire world is run by incentives. So they actually report in one of these books that in the Chicago school district, they had some testing irregularities where some of the lowest students got some of the highest scores. So they sent a team of central office administrators into the school and told the teachers who had been in the rooms that had the scores that were odd to go home for the day, and the central office administrators re-administered the tests and got the real scores. A lot of people who were sent home that day just didn't get to come back.
Wow.
Here's what they did, because they weren't very bright. The test is arranged so that the early questions are easier than the later questions. They worked on the later questions and changed the answers. So the kids who are not going to score very well scored really well in the last quarter of the test. Not likely. But even more bizarre, some of the answers they changed were incorrect. They didn't even know what the right answer was, and they're the teachers. So, needless to say, don't do that. All right, I took some time on the plane coming back from Boston just to look at some of the data, and I don't know if you all did that or not. There are a few things that kind of stuck out to me, but there could be things that stuck out to you too. Anybody want to share anything, just to sort of direct us to what part of this table 5.1 you're looking at, and see if we can get to the same part of the table. Anybody want to try one?
Well, it looked like the district Hispanic students didn't perform as well as the majority.
Right, right. There's a part about 3 pages in, State Education Agency Academic Excellence Indicator System, student information. It's a number of students by grade. At the top of the column, it says like 15,433.
Do you have a page number? Or I guess there isn't a page number.
Let me see if I can. It's probably more like 5 pages or 6 pages into it.
Table 5, yeah. Yeah.
So section 2, if that helps.
Table 5, section 2.
Students by grade. Okay.
Yeah, students by grade. Everything looks hunky-dory until you get to 11 and 12.
Mm-hmm. A lot of dropout?
Yeah.
What I would say.
That's not good.
Mm-mm.
I guess it would be good if you were testing 11 and 12.
If you were what? It's getting hard to hear you. It's getting real muffled.
I'm sorry, if you were teaching, if you were testing grades 11 and 12,
Oh, yeah.
the ones who stayed might be better than the ones who dropped out. Moving on down to the next, a little lower on that adjacent page, where it says economically disadvantaged. And the percent for the district is 75.6, and the percent for the state is 49.3. Lots and lots of poverty. Moving on down a little lower, retention rates by grade. Seemed a little odd that the state was retaining 3.3% of the 7th graders, and in our district, I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's right. It's almost 11.
Yeah. All right. So non-special education rates, almost 11, and the state was 2.8. I'm not sure what's going on in 7th grade.
And it starts in 6th grade because it jumps from a
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Now, it's really important, and you guys know this already, but it's really important to look for trends. And the best we have here is a 2-year trend. You know, when you look at the very first part, and they're talking about the class of 2000 and the class of 1999, we were the class of 2001, class of 2000. I mean, a trend by definition can't be 1 point. You don't have much of a trend if you only have 2 points. So, you know, you don't have enough information here to make a whole lot of intelligent interpretations, in my view, if you only have 2 years. And one other thing to keep in mind is, remember, if you have 2 years of 8th grade testing, you've got 2 different groups. It's not a trend. It's 2 different groups.
Yeah.
All right, then a few pages back when they're talking about budgeted expenditure information at the top of the page. And then it says program information. And the percent special ed is 16.1%. And for the state, it's 11.9%. So either they've got a lot more special ed kids or they're over-identifying.
The district has a turnover rate for teachers of 20.8%.
That's astounding too.
Wow.
So way too much data, but so looking at page 60. Question 2 says, identify professional development needs for a staff based on the district plan that you have designed. Now we're going to design, if we were going to design a plan, we do it based on the data. Where would you start?
Well, I'd want to know more about 6th and 7th grade.
Yeah.
Well, your retention rate on your staff, like we were just saying, is pretty bad. And I think it was Craig that said tonight how important hiring is, and we all know that.
Yeah.
But what is their emphasis on hiring and well, you got to make sure you're getting the right people in there, because that if you get the right people, that can reduce so many headaches.
And I think too, Joe, you hit it on the head. But if you're talking about professional development and they have a higher number of low SES kids than they really know how to handle, I mean, that to me would be why people are leaving. You know, you're in your classroom and you feel like you don't have any tools to meet the needs of your kids. That's tough. I mean, that's hard to do. But you know, some type of training, Ruby Payne or something like that on how to deal with that would really stand out to me looking at those numbers.
You're going to have to
how your principals feel.
Yeah.
Sure that
some sort of climate survey too.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the kids and the people running through their office, I'm thinking that if people are leaving, that we kind of have something pretty dysfunctional everywhere. I mean, principals, kind of the gambit. So I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty big job.
Yeah, average teacher pay wasn't anything to write home about, was it?
No.
Notice how high the central administration was as compared to the state.
Yeah, that was interesting too.
When you compare teachers to state teachers, I mean, there's some systemic issues there that would get teachers to stay longer. Therefore, the professional development would actually work, and they could build in some depth and capacity if they could actually retain the teachers long enough to do that. And then that's going to impact your scores. But if you keep bringing brand new people in year after year after year, you're going to continue to get what you always got.
Well, and keep in mind, they may not be getting people from the top half of the class.
Right.
Right.
You know,
Especially with pay that way.
yeah, I mean, the pay and the conditions and the kinds of kids they're going to get to deal with. And I get to work with these kinds of kids all day long for this amount of pay. If I have a choice, I'm probably going somewhere else.
It's interesting to look at the average years of experience for the teachers, though. I mean, 13 years on the average, as many have stayed.
Yeah, and then you wonder why.
Well, yeah, that's the mediocre, and everybody else is leaving.
Yeah, everybody got real comfortable and said, you know what, these kids just can't do it anyway, so we get paid whatever the scores are.
Mm-hmm.
Very high minority population too. If I read the data right, I think it was 73% so-called minority population.
That's true.
And 25% that you would consider their teachers are minority if you look at it. Mostly,
Yeah.
I mean, 5.8% Hispanic, 20.6% African American, and then less than 1% the other ones.
That's one of the toughest things we've had to do here in Hayesville is to try to recruit teachers of color.
Same here.
You know, they you know, you almost have to get 2, 3, or 5. You can't just get one.
True.
They're hard to find because they can go elsewhere and get paid rather well compared to what we can offer them here in Parsons. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. So item 3, identify special programs needed for your district.
Yes, I will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned Ruby Payne. I think that's essential. Just give people an understanding of the mindset they're dealing with. Boy, before and after school tutoring, I mean, this group needs a lot of support.
Credit recovery type programs and things like that.
Yeah.
And it might be even reaching out to the families and helping families with new language acquisitions and helping navigate things like banks and grocery stores and those things also.
Yeah. What strategies will you implement to facilitate the cooperation of the faculty, the school board, and the larger school community in achieving this district plan?
Wow.
I think they need to start over from ground zero and develop a strategic plan and get buy-in, because it seems obvious to me that there's no buy-in here. People are just going their own directions.
I would tend to agree. And then probably a team of people or teams of people going out into the community to share that and then look for ways to develop partnerships.
Well, I'm not so sure that everybody's going their own way. It appears to me that there's nothing in place to give these teachers and staff direction.
Right.
So they're struggling themselves coming up with strategies and interventions to make it happen. And so to me, there's a void in that area that those staff members are struggling and they don't have the skill set or the tools to do what they need to do.
I would agree with that. I would say that based on the original lack of information from the superintendent, other than we want our test scores to come up, he didn't really give me any direction on how to get that done. And the teachers seem to be at a loss as to how to make it happen on their own.
Have any of your districts been put on corrective action?
We were back on, well, I guess it was called Plan of Improvement back with the KLN days here. When went through all that and came out of that real well. But that was a big process.
Yeah, actually, we did the same thing. It really helped us.
Absolutely.
Just pulling a systemic plan. We were pretty footloose and fancy free. We go in your classroom, close the door, do good stuff.
Yeah.
And our results were all over the place. And, once we got a teaching model that we could use and adopted a math curriculum that made some sense, and then coordinated all that, test scores went up, and, it takes 2 years to get off corrective action. We got off in 2 years.
So did we.
The teachers hated it. They're used to doing their own thing. And it was kind of fun in a way, because as superintendent, I knew morale was down because they were being told what to do and they didn't like it. And I had to meet with a KLN person on a monthly basis. And so at the end of the year, at the end of the first year, I told the entire faculty and staff, if you don't like being on a plan of improvement, get the scores up. It goes back to Cam Newton stuff, keep me out of the end zone. So, you guys don't like being told what to do? Neither do I. I just had a meeting with our KLN person. We've got 8 different areas to work on. She gave me 8 different things to do. You think I like it? I do not. Let's get off this plan and get better scores. Those go hand in hand. So in terms of coordinating the district, it helped, but I'm not a real top-down person, but this forced us to be top-down. But it was the state telling us what to do. And our scores were better than these.
Yep.
Way better. These guys need a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so go ahead.
I'm just looking at those scores by grade level. To me, that could be something you would look at for that 6th and 7th grade spread.
Yes.
Is there something in the curriculum that's not matching the standards that are being tested?
Yeah. There's something going on there.
Can we blame it on puberty?
Well, what do the state scores look like?
Well, the social studies is where they fall hard in 8th grade. I mean, they're in 8th grade reading and writing in math, even science, it's decent. But boy, they dropped to a 64.8% district-wide when it comes down to social studies. And it's tugging all those scores down.
Yeah.
I don't really... I'm not sure where they got that 47%.
Good point.
I don't see how they got that. Are those an average of all those scores for 2001? Because how can you have a lower on all tests than all the other scores combined?
Somebody didn't figure it right.
Yeah, well, and honestly, if your data's crap, your conclusions are crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, which brings up another excellent point. Make sure your data is correct.
Or the person reading is reading it right.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Questioning whether I'm reading it right.
All right, let me move on to item 5. In what ways are strategic planning and constructing a district plan based on the data alike, and how might they be different?
Strategic planning seems to me to be bigger. And then you're constructing a district plan that's more specific to achieve the goal that you've made for your strategic plan.
Exactly right. Let me see who else here. All right, okay. Let's move on to the next case study.
Español aquí.
What does that mean?
We speak Spanish here.
Yes.
Do we? Question mark.
No habla español.
That's what it means, man. I took 3 years. I learned.
All right, cool.
Come on, Russ.
Okay, so based upon the case study, we've got committee recommendations. And the first question is, what is the first step that Superintendent Fletcher and his administrative team should implement regarding the recommendations?
Well, I need to look at the recommendations again, but I seem to remember seeing in here somewhere where they didn't have very many bilingual people that had been hired at all. And boy, if that population is going up as much as expansion creating for 500 jobs for 500 people, holy cow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. You've got to get some bilingual counselors in there. They said they had no full-time trained Spanish translators. And boy, I bet that's challenging.
You're right too. And that, I mean, I was thinking too, more along the lines of something that you can, you know, it says here, ensure that the school district strives to involve Hispanic parents in school activities. That to me is something that would be simpler right off the bat than going out and recruiting and hiring teachers. And that's kind of what I went into saying, what can be done? You know, I mean, that to me is something that would be able to be acted upon a lot quicker than going out and recruiting and hiring people to come to your district. So that's kind of where I was going, like what can be done with fairly, you know, it's all going to be hard work, but you're looking at, you know, you're not talking about dropping $60,000 and saying, hey, let's go get this teacher. And, you know, a lot of those people are pretty set where they're at, first of all, because they're needed they're needed everywhere. And you're kind of in a bidding process there. But if you're talking about budget, some of those things that were easier on the budget would be where I would start anyways.
Well, to me, this is a perfect example where you can create a partnership with your community.
Yes.
There's a community of where these families live and participate either through a church or through a civic, is to get those stakeholders involved where they're providing service for you at no cost.
Yes.
To help improve the capacities of those families. So I think that the school really needs to reach out and bring those in, and then maybe look at those other ways to bring in quality instruction. But I think you have to go to the community right off the bat and say, help.
Yep.
Yeah, great point.
But it does say too that there were no agencies at all in the community providing classes in Spanish on immigration issues, work permits, driver's license, residencies. I mean, I'm not sure that there's a lot in the community. And I think, unfortunately, if the community's not ready for that influx, which it doesn't sound like it was, that a lot of that, unfortunately, is going to fall on the school. And if you want parents to be a part of their child's education and to be able to be a part of the entire school community, it's kind of like what 259 does right at the moment. They have evening classes and things for their different immigrant families and stuff that they provide. And I'm not terribly sure that they're going to have any kind of an option here.
That's what it said there too, that the parents wanted the education as well because they didn't know how to help. So that would be key too, is getting them the education that they need.
Yeah, it looks to me like this is going to end up being the authors are asking, what would your first steps be? But I mean, as a practical matter, this is going to have to be a comprehensive plan. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts that are low. What might you do in terms of working with outside agencies and the city or county?
It sounds like from the case study that the only outside agency there is that Central State University, because it says that there is no agency providing. Maybe you could, actually doesn't say what I thought it said. So perhaps approaching agencies and saying this is a win-win we need to provide these type of outreach opportunities, as Joan suggested. That's currently happening in that USD 259.
Yeah, I think cooperation, collaboration, it certainly can't hurt. And it doesn't have to all be on the school.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of work through some of the churches too to
Yeah.
get them involved with adult education and things like that.
Yeah, great point.
I think it would definitely be worth talking to the Fresh Farms poultry processing community as well to see if they're going to be offering any type of English language learning classes for their employees. And because I would think that would be a safety issue in the long run, but
Well, if they could partner with the schools, a lot of our space is empty in the evening.
Right.
And this could be a 2 or 3 shift operation where they want their people to get better in terms of speaking English, but they have no place to train them.
mm-hmm.
So it could be a good partnership right there.
The tuition assistance idea was a good one on page 67.
Yes.
Especially if they can home grow them students over time.
Yeah. So item 6 on page 68, if you were Superintendent Fletcher, how would you demonstrate your growing sensitivity to multicultural issues in your community? Muy bien, y too?
Yeah, I would think you most definitely would have to be involved in the multicultural community. I mean, you need to be out and about, and you can't do it from your chair, obviously.
I think of that movie that the track coach moved to a Hispanic community and he asked the Hispanic families to help him provide a quinceañera for his daughter. I can't think of the name of the movie.
Farland.
Okay, there you go. That's what I think of.
Yeah.
And
I
how-
would learn Spanish.
What'd you say?
I said I'd start to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the culture. I mean, it's part of your community. You need to be versed in it, or at least be able to get involved in it. So.
Kind of honor them.
Yeah, sending things home in 2 languages.
Yeah.
Doing your best to get some things translated so they know the field trip is on Thursday morning and the kid needs a jacket or whatever that might be. I think that would be a good thing. And then being visible, visiting their neck of the woods, their neighborhood, as those people are going to be there, they're going to develop their own little community. They're going to have their own mom and pop shops there, selling, food or whatever, like a lot of the larger communities do, and not being afraid to walk in there and letting people know who you are.
Great point. Item 11, how could Superintendent Fletcher involve Hispanic parents and/or community leaders in planning?
Well, I think you got to go to your principals and just make sure. Don't assume that what are those site councils looking like, and what kind of input does everybody have there? Or your district steering committee? What does your board look like? Do you need to recruit some board members for the next time? They've got to be involved in all the decision-making process.
Yeah, I would drill down even to some of your key Hispanic students, because sometimes you'll have that high-flying student that can bridge that gap between school and home. Try to get all those people to the table. Site council, things like that, I question who would be going in this community. But I think what you said is perfect. You got to get some of these new people, different people, to come to the table. And I think you can start with those students.
You may have to go to their table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that too, you might have to be reach in the pockets and provide a translator so that they feel like their voice can be heard, if that makes sense. So,
It does.
yeah.
That's where those high-flying students can also, Zeke, come into play. I worked in a district with a lot of minorities, and some of the parents didn't, of course, didn't speak English, but the kids would come to the parent-teacher conferences or to any conference you had and be that translator, be that person to explain to their parents what you were talking about. So,
yeah, those are a lot of fun because you're assuming the kid is translating the right message.
that's true.
You really learn to trust yourself.
Yeah, if it could be a different translation if you have a student with a D or that one that has the A. So,
Another way that you could promote your school is to find a common language like music. Get them to music concerts, or math is a universal language. Get them in for a family math night, and you're going to know whether they're communicating with those parents and using the correct words or not, because the parents will understand whether they're following the process or not.
Excellent. Great idea. Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts in this case study as well, and this could happen to anybody. I was just sitting at a table at a school finance summit at the Kansas Association of School Boards, and Richard's mentor was sitting next to me.
Dr. Atha?
Yeah, Dr. Atha was right there. He had a lot of. He was talking about a business moving into the Shawnee Mission area that was going to have over 1,000 or 1,200 employees. And I don't remember which business it was.
Well, I don't know that, but we have so much construction, and we have like 700 new doors being developed.
Wow.
In these areas, meaning apartments.
Yeah. Wow.
Real concerned. I mean, we have all these TIF projects up here, and we're gaining all these new students, but we're not getting any monies because everything is tipped.
Yeah. Explain what TIP is.
It's a tax increment financing, which basically gives these businesses a chance to move in and not pay any taxes for a period of up to 20 years. They get to capture the sales tax, but the district doesn't get any taxing back.
No property tax.
Property tax.
Wow. And given what the Black grant situation is, you don't even get credit for additional kids.
Right.
Oh, you go to Topeka and beg.
Oh, that's true. Richard?
Yes.
Did your superintendent go to Topeka and beg for additional money?
He's been up there a lot of times, but he did not ask for any supplemental monies like our neighbors did.
Okay, for extraordinary needs.
Right.
I've done that.
Kansas City, Kansas has done that.
We got money.
You got money from us.
Yes. Well, I got money from me too because I paid into the same fund as everybody else.
Say thank you, Joan.
Thanks. You got some return on your investment. I didn't get any on mine.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the video clip. One of the things I think is absolutely critical is to make sure when you're the superintendent that you have the ability to speak to large groups of people. And so that's why I included this particular clip, was to give us some tools to work with. End up in different situations with different groups, and if you're not used to it or prepared, you can play them out pretty easily.
But Dr. Burke, that's not fair. This gentleman with his English accent, anything sounds great.
Yeah, I read that in the comments too.
Oh, was it there? Okay.
Yeah. No, I understand the point. Yeah, you can get away with a lot with that.
But he had some great points. Yes, I just joking.
For me, what was really interesting, I've spent, most of my career as a music teacher, and him talking about, training your voice, have everybody get up and, warm up their voice, like a music teacher would. But it was interesting. There were some years where people had been collecting data on music contests, especially for vocal music, and young men who had lower voices and who had somewhat command of the piece they were singing, assuming that some of the basic things were there, could actually score higher than people who had higher voices in singing, and had brought a lot of attention to different people who were judging those contests, and having those discussions. But for him to even say that when you're listening to someone talk, and I've had people actually say that to me before as a woman, you're not as maybe believable, or not, it's not as easy for you to be trusted because your voice is higher. And I found that something that I really kind of paid attention to while he was talking.
I remember hearing advice from the famous St. Louis Cardinals baseball announcer, Jack Buck. And somebody was asking him, how can you get a better announcing voice? And certainly, based upon the period he grew up in, we wouldn't take the same advice. His advice was smoke more cigarettes, which came back to bite him. But yeah,
I'm sure.
No, I like the video a lot, and one of them a few weeks ago, I showed to my building leadership team, and we actually took it to PLCs and developed some questions. And I think this is applicable to teachers as well.
Yeah.
Definitely, not just with how he talked about tone and all that, how important it is, but he had those seven, I don't know what to call them, bad habits. And I like that, he said excuses the blame thrower.
Like that one, yes.
And then he talked about the hail policy. Really, really good stuff. And I think I'm going to send this one to our BLT too. And I think I just enjoy videos like this. And I think they're common sense stuff. Sometimes common sense stuff we just forget. If you're gossiping about people, stop it. If you're judging them when they're talking, stop it.
Yeah.
Just simple things that are really important.
A great point. Did I share with you how I outwitted everybody in terms of never taking a speech class? Oh, golly. Okay, so second year of teaching, and our football team was 1-8. And I don't think this was a coincidence, or he was ducking. The fall sports assembly was after in the evening. About 400 kids came, and the head coach got sick, and so he asked me to speak for him, and he was sick for a week. So I was living in Lawrence at the time, driving to Shawnee Heights, and I had plenty of time in the car to think of witty things to say. And going through high school, I never took a speech class, and going through college, I never took a speech class. And working with a high school class of 25 to 30 kids, no problem. Just a natural. So I don't have any notes, and I stand up in front of these 400 kids, and I was, second year teacher, pretty popular with the kids, and so I get this huge ovation. So now I'm starting to think, well, maybe I should tell some jokes. I hadn't prepared any jokes, but that kind of gave me this vapor lock. And so I stood at the podium, completely speechless, unable to think of a single thing to say. And so the kids applauded for a while, and then they seemed to think it was funny. So they started laughing, which didn't help. And then they turned mean, started yelling things like, "Why don't you say something?" And I'm thinking to myself, I just wish I could. and so the principal finally leaned over, but he was sitting behind me. And he's, as bad as you are in Topeka, you get one all-city player, regardless of how bad you are. The principal leans over and says, "Why don't you tell him about our all-city player?" And I thought, oh, good idea. So I said, so-and-so was named to first team All-City. Big cheers and applause, and then it dies down, and there I am, stage fright again. It was the most, at that moment, was the most humiliating moment of my life. And, but I didn't learn. And so then I was a principal in a little tiny school district with about 300 kids, and principals were required to go to board meetings. And as luck would have it, something came up, and the superintendent turned to me and said, would you explain to the board what happened? And so I got real nervous. And when that happens, you don't get real deep lungs worth of air. You get real breathy. And so my voice went up an octave at least. And I could hardly catch my breath. And it was just embarrassing. And so the next day, as I came by to see the superintendent, he said, you seemed different last night. Were you really nervous or something? And I said, yeah, I really was. And once again, I was just humiliated. And this time I took some action. So I went out and I bought a book. It's called, it's by Jack Valente, called Speak Up with Confidence. And it was, like 150 pages. And I read through that, and I learned everything I could about it, and I practiced. I mean, a lot of it's just practice. Always have notes. Always have notes. You never know when stage fright might come. You can always read what you've got if you have notes. If you don't have notes, you can't read it. So I tell you all that to tell you then that after I got married, my father-in-law and I would watch football and basketball games together. I mean, I would watch them, and he would sleep through them. And he was a great guy, just a great guy. And day before Thanksgiving, he was supposed to come see us. He lived in Manhattan, and he didn't show up. And so my wife was saying, well, maybe we should drive the path he would have taken and see if he or something. And I said, well, we could do that, but let's try one other thing. So I said, let's call the Riley County Sheriff and have them go by and check on the house. And so sure enough, they went by and they checked, and then they called and said, well, I regret to inform you, but your father-in-law has passed away.
Oh my gosh.
And so, he's 74 years old, which now seems really young. And so I was selected to give a eulogy. And I'd never given a eulogy before. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So, everything happens for a purpose. So when I was in Valley Falls, you guys know what Hobie is? Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Hugh O'Brien in the old days was Wyatt Earp on TV. And he started this youth program, and they pay for one kid from every high school in almost every state, maybe some foreign countries, to go to about a week-long leadership training in every state. Really, really a cool program. And I was named the chairman of the corporate board for Kansas. And they sent us in like August 22nd to Phoenix for training. Now, you don't want to be in Phoenix in August. They must have gotten really cheap rooms. But they signed us up so that we were paired with another corporate president. So I got a corporate president from West Virginia. And so he has a doctoral degree too. His doctoral degree is in something called axiology, which is actually, according to him, the study of leadership. And it's from Harvard. And that's who I get paired with. But not only that, he's an ordained Methodist minister. And not only that, he's a member of the governor's cabinet in West Virginia. And that's who I get paired with. So I'm thinking, all right, if I'm going to do this eulogy, who can I call that would help me? So I called this guy. And he said, I've got lots of advice for you. And here's the thing. Write down your speech. Over-prepare. Have it memorized if you want, but over-prepare. Go over it and over it and over it. There's a chance you might get nervous, and you'll feel a tightness in your chest. In order to overcome that, you've got to breathe. So take a deep breath. Everybody else in the room will think it's a dramatic pause. It's actually you keeping your emotions under control. And then he said, remember, you're not mourning a death, you're celebrating a life. So don't be afraid to make people laugh. And begin with the end in mind. You want people to walk out of the funeral saying, yeah, that was him. And so that's what I did. So this guy was in the Navy, during World War II. And, have you ever known older people who tell the same stories over and over and over again? I would always pretend it was the first time I'd heard them. And I'd always laugh. I was the only one who ever laughed. Everybody else would say, shut up, we already heard that. So here's one of the stories, just so you know. President Calvin Coolidge, a man of few words, went to church, came home from church, and his wife hadn't gone to church with him. And his wife said, so how was church? And he said it was fine. And she said, well, what was the sermon about? And he said, sin. And she was getting exasperated. And she said, well, so what did he say about it? And he said, the minister said he's against it. That's the joke. Okay, so I was able to say, and I want to tell you a few stories I heard from Harold at least once. And so that kind of broke everybody up. But it's so important when you're the leader to be able to know your context, know your audience, know how to address them, and to be incredibly professional. And when I took this job here, I left Neodesha where we had 750 kids and came to Hayesville and we had 750 employees. We had 120 employees in Neodesha. My back to school address was in a much smaller venue with a whole lot fewer people. And so when I turned around and looked and saw 750 people wandering into the auditorium, that was a little scary. Now, it got amusing in the middle because I came to rehearse early and I thought, these batteries will last a long time. So I didn't bring the power cord for my laptop. And I got halfway through my presentation and they had named my computer Dr. Burke. And so I'm facing the crowd talking and all of a sudden everybody starts laughing. And so I first looked to make sure my zipper's not down, which made them laugh even more. And then I turned around and looked at the screen, and the screen said, turn off Dr. Burke. Now everybody's howling. Some of my predecessors didn't have a very good sense of humor, and so the board members who were present were waiting to see whose head was going to roll and how I would handle this moment of frustration. And then my tech guy came running over and said, what happened? And I told him, I didn't bring the power cord, but I have this VHS tape of famous clips from Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Fast Times at Ridgemont High and last 11 minutes. We can go to the videotape and we can show the videotape while you get a power cord, and then I can do the second half when you get back. And that's what we did. But just one of those things where I didn't have any idea that I'd get an interruption in the middle of my speech. Mm-hmm. And yet you just had to think on your feet and tell the crowd, just talk among yourselves for a few moments. So I've tripped up a number of times, and it's become an area of focus for me when I teach to make sure those kinds of things don't happen to my students. So if it seems odd that I've spent so much time and energy on it, that's why. All right. We're about ready for the launch, and I need to ask you a question. There was a clip going around the start of school. There was a teaching center. Have you guys all seen that? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and show it to you then. Or at least try to.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this, Dr. Burke.
Okay, how many people have seen it?
I showed it at our first professional development day when we returned. The teacher had sent it to me. It's pretty good. Pretty funny.
Can you guys see that? Or do I need to share again, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and share it.
All right, here we go. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
I remember this now.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, the volume's really low.
Oh, all right, stop. Volume's low?
I can't hear it at all.
Me either.
All right. Don't go away. I'm going to fix it.
I remember this now, Joe. I think I had a teacher send it to me too.
Okay, hold on.
It is good.
All right.
Am I the only one that hadn't seen it?
I haven't seen it in the
You hear now?
Teaching Center is brought to you by BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Hello and welcome to Teaching Center. I'm Boyd Maxwell with today's top stories from the exciting world of teaching. And I'm Perry Schmidt. Well, now we know the long-awaited announcement by star English teacher Ruby Ruth has sent teaching fans across the nation into a frenzy.
I've enjoyed my time in Ohio very much, but I'm pleased to announce that I'm taking my talents back to New York City. Thank you very much.
Apparently, PS 431 has made Ruby an offer she couldn't refuse. $80 million guaranteed over 6 years, with another $40 million in incentives based on test scores. This salary puts her right up there with Rockridge Elementary's Katie Hope and William Wu out of Colgate Magnet. All right, let's take a look at yesterday's high school teacher draft from Radio City Music Hall, where Central Rapids High, recipient of the worst test scores last semester, made the first pick. That was no surprise to anyone.
With the first pick, Central Rapids High takes calculus teacher Mike Yost from Tulsa Teachers College.
And just like that, you're a millionaire. Mike Yost is an unbelievable story. His father living from paycheck to paycheck as a humble pro football player. Kid was a natural mathlete. You know he's going to buy his mom a house. Oh, you know this. Oh, there's no way around that. You owe your mom. Today's highlight of the day is brought to you by the 100% Black Angus Beef Thick Burger on a fresh baked bun from Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. Now it's time for the highlight of the day. Star history teacher Ashley Ferguson has been running up them test scores over at Vince Clortho High.
Okay.
Woo!
Confederate forces fired first. Can anyone tell me where this battle took place?
Now, look at this. She looks left, then right, looks past the students with their arms up in the air, spots Max, hears her back, sees that even though his hand is, he's engaged.
Max?
It was Fort Sumter.
That's right.
Oh, come on. See what she did there? She's bringing an introvert into the discussion, y'all. That's a Teacher of the Year play right there. That's right, boy. You know, the confidence gained by Max by answering that question correctly will enhance his performance throughout the rest of the year, no doubt. Coming up after the break, Mayfield Prep trades French teacher Janine Lowe to Skyline High for a head librarian and 2 lunch ladies to be named later. We'll get the inside scoop on the impending teacher strike that could cripple the season. Next up on Teaching Center.
Strength courses through me. I am velocity. I am power. I am a leader, a believer. I am the force that guides. I am the gateway to what is possible, the path to the future. I am the future.
The all-new 2015 6 Series is here. Meet the new teacher's pet.
That we can afford it.
Okay, was that new to anybody, or is that just an oldie but goodie?
It was new to me. I hadn't seen
I hadn't seen it either.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. All right. Well, it's worth looking at. I love the parody. That's just wonderful.
I left the little running tab under the bottom with the test scores.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got a treat for you for next week. Our 5A superintendent is, his first name is Corey. That's all I ever call him is Corey. He's from Valley Center. He's also the president.
Corey Gibson.
Corey Gibson, yeah.
Halstead.
Yeah, right.
Corey was in Halston. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So Corey is currently president of KSSA, the Superintendent's Association for the state. He's also chairperson of the Council of Superintendents. So sometime in your career as a superintendent, no doubt you will be named to be on that. And sometimes it takes a while. It took me quite a while to get named to it, but eventually they get to everybody. Apparently they got to me. In any case, he'll have a wealth of information, not just on what it's like to be a 5A superintendent, but also he'll be talking to you all about support services that they offer new superintendents. So that should be really, really informative.
Well, Dr. Burke, I'm going to tell Mr. Gibson that it's pretty obvious you could not find anybody. He will do, he'll be really good. He'll be really good.
All right, let me ask one question here for our praxis takers. Any questions on the test that you remember that might have had to do with Title I, Title II, Title III?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to have my director of our Assistant Superintendent for Learning Services come in at a later date and explain the ups and downs and ins and outs of what money can be used for and all that stuff, so that you won't be caught cold when you get to that part. All right. Any questions? Any questions before we go? All right. Hearing none, we are adjourned. I'll see you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Russ, you dingling. You're a